ITPro asks, is the UK's Computer Misuse Act fit for purpose? With the use and distribution of personal computers exploding over the last few decades, legislators have been keen to establish laws that govern how digitally stored information is protected. The Computer Misuse Act was drafted in 1990 to govern the way individuals can lawfully access data on a machine. Crucially, it criminalized any unauthorized access to data, as well as the practice of making modifications to stored information without the permission of the owner. The law has been updated several times since to reflect continued changes in technology and cybersecurity, including a significant update in 2015. However, many now believe the law is substantially out of date and that an entirely new piece of legislation is required to keep up with the times. What does the Computer Misuse Act do? The Computer Misuse Act is used to prosecute cybersecurity offenses in the UK. It's mainly used in cases that involve unauthorized use of computer systems, but it also covers unauthorized modification of data and the distribution of hacking tools. There are 3 penalty levels for those prosecuted under the Computer Misuse Act. The lightest penalty is for those found guilty of gaining unauthorized access to a computer system, which carries up to 2 years in prison and a £5,000 fine. If a person is found to have done this with the intent of stealing data, they face up to 10 years in prison and an unlimited fine, determined on a case-by-case basis. The same penalties apply to those found to have modified content and those distributing malware designed to destroy or change data. If a person is found to have caused harm to human welfare, or if their actions created a risk to national security, the law allows for life imprisonment. So what is the problem with the law? There are broadly 3 main issues with the law in its current form. 1. It lacks clear definitions. 2. It uses an outdated view of cybercrime. And 3. It fails to differentiate between malicious and ethical hacking. A lack of clear definitions. The digital landscape has changed beyond recognition since the Act was first introduced. Not many people had access to computers back in 1990, and if you did have access to one, it was usually through work, and those lucky enough to own a device usually didn't have more than one. Today, most users juggle multiple tablets, laptops, and PCs across both work and personal life. In fact, the term computer isn't clearly defined in the Act and fails to accommodate any modern definitions of what most people might consider a computer. This creates a gray area where prosecutors are forced to apply the Act based on subjective interpretation rather than objective fact. Many have complained that modern devices like smartphones, baby monitors, Wi-Fi connected dishwashers, or CCTV systems are not adequately covered by the Act, despite the fact they are connected to networks and are managed through software. An outdated view of cybercrime. In 1990, the methods through which an individual could cause harm using a computer were extremely narrow, which meant that the law could rely on a fairly simplistic interpretation of what constitutes a malicious act. Today, that's no longer the case. One example of a relatively recent attack vector is ransomware, a byproduct of our over-reliance on computer systems to power modern businesses and public services. The Act does a poor job at accommodating these new threats, which has created friction between law enforcement and security researchers. Many argue that judges often appear to misunderstand the wider issues facing the industry, while others point to the Act's fairly anemic record for supporting criminal investigations, with less than 1% of hacking offenses investigated resulting in prosecution. Richard Millett, cybersecurity training lead at Firebrand Training and regular cybersecurity advisor for police forces across the UK, told us that many prosecutors favor using alternative legislation where possible, not only because of a lack of definitions, but also because much tougher penalties can be issued as a result. He added that the penalties applied by the Act are not reflective of the financial damage that can be inflicted through hacking, which can run into the millions in many cases. Ethical hacking is technically illegal under the Act. The most difficult challenge facing cybersecurity researchers is the Act's failure to distinguish between criminal and ethical hacking. Specifically, the Computer Misuse Act includes a provision from Section 37 of the Police and Justice Act of 2006, which states that making, supplying, or obtaining any articles for use in a malicious act using a computer is categorized as criminal activity. That means simply gaining access to hacked material is considered illegal, even if you happen to be an ethical hacker researching a new threat. The act also makes it illegal to access a computer system without consent, which technically includes functions performed by researchers to analyze potential threats, whether that's scanning, file interrogation, or interaction with compromised systems. In these situations, the letter of the law would require the researcher to gain the consent of both victims and the suspected criminal. Peter Yap, partner at Schilling's law firm and former deputy director of the National Cybersecurity Center, explained to ITPro that it's because of this quirk in the law that there are now a multitude of US-based companies offering vulnerability scanning services for the extended supply chain, but there are few, if any, operating in the UK. He adds that although he is unaware of any cases involving UK researchers being sanctioned for their work, the vague threat of prosecution may leave some ethical hackers wary of potential prosecution. Are we likely to see reform? A review of the Act, announced in May 2021, is currently underway and seeks to address its main criticisms. Given the pressure coming from a range of voices across the industry and academia, reform is likely, but whether it will be enough remains to be seen. For more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the ITPro YouTube channel or visit us at our website.